I remember the day he found out like it happened 5 minutes ago. The look on his face was enough to make my knees buckle. His eyes were full of shock and anger, and he stood there breathing hard as if all the air had been punched out of his lungs. In that moment, I felt my whole world tilt. I was afraid he would hate me. I was afraid he would walk away. Most of all, I was afraid he would reject our child. I guess I should go back to how it all started. My name is Sarah Carter. A year ago, I was just another employee in the huge empire owned by the richest man I had ever met, Alexander Knight. He was known for his towering office building in the center of the city, for the charities he supported, and of course for his net worth that was whispered about in social circles. People said he was brilliant and harsh. They said he was the kind of man you did not cross. They said he was never wrong. Some of that was true, but a lot of it came from rumors. I was not the kind of person who attracted attention. I was an administrative assistant in the marketing department, not even in the direct line of his usual day-to-day staff. My work mainly involved handling schedules, typing up reports, and making sure everything went smoothly for my immediate boss, Harriet. Harriet was a good manager, strict but fair. I remember the day that changed my life started in an ordinary way. I never thought I would come face to face with Mr. Knight, let alone end up in his penthouse apartment. I got out of bed early because I wanted to catch the subway before rush hour. My apartment was in a decent neighborhood, but it was a long commute to the Knight Tower on most mornings. I would read or listen to music while riding the train downtown. That morning, though, I was busy thinking about a big presentation Harriet and I had been working on for weeks. We were supposed to give a short pitch to the executives about a new marketing approach. It was a simple assignment, but Harriet had told me that if this went well, my name would be in a room with the big bosses. I arrived at the office just before 8 and set out the copies of the presentation slides, arranged the handouts, and tested the projector in the conference room. Everything was going fine. Harriet was nervous, but she hid it well behind her calm, almost frosty exterior. People started filling the room, carrying laptops and notepads, finding seats around a long, polished table. To my great surprise, Alexander Knight himself walked in with 2 of his close advisors. He rarely attended these smaller meetings in person. Usually he preferred to receive a summary or watch a recording if it was relevant to one of his major projects. But there he was, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, his hair brushed back and a focused expression on his face. He took a seat at the head of the table, and I noticed Harriet's stiff posture. She looked like she was afraid to breathe too loudly. I remember the way he nodded at me when I offered him a folder containing the printouts. He didn't smile, but his eyes lingered on me for a moment longer than I expected. I thought maybe it was because I was a new face. Either way, it was an odd feeling to have the most powerful person in the building look at me like that. The presentation went smoothly. Harriet spoke for the most part, describing our idea to reach out to a younger audience through social media campaigns and interactive polls. I clicked through the slides on the projector near the end. Harriet had asked me to explain a small segment of the data that I had researched. I talked for 2 minutes tops, giving a summary of cost versus reach. When I finished, Mr. Knight leaned forward and asked a question. I had never heard him speak to me directly before. His voice was low and measured, so Missy paused, and I realized he did not know my name. Carter, Harriet whispered to him helpfully. Miss Carter, he said, what makes you think this approach will give us a better return than our current strategy? I cleared my throat, feeling my heart race. Well, sir, if we look at the demographic data, especially users in the 18 to 30-year-old bracket, they interact more with polls and real-time events. By investing a small portion of our budget in these interactive components, we create a buzz that makes people share these events with friends, who share again, and so on. It's like a chain reaction. He watched me carefully as I spoke, then nodded. Thank you. That was it, one short acknowledgement. I thought that would be the last time we ever interacted, at least on a personal level, but I was wrong. The meeting ended, and Harriet looked relieved. I felt proud of myself for not freezing under pressure. During lunch, Harriet told me I did well and that she hoped the executives would move forward with our plan. We both went back to work, never knowing that this was a day that would change everything. That afternoon, I was typing away at my desk when my phone rang. It was the front desk receptionist. She said, Sarah, there's someone from the executive office here to see you. I felt a sudden jolt of anxiety. Executive office? Are you sure? Yes, she said, he wants to talk to you. I stood up and smoothed out my skirt. My thoughts raced. Had I made a mistake during the presentation? Was I in trouble? Harriet noticed my frantic look and raised an eyebrow, but I just shook my head and headed to the reception area. There in the waiting area stood a tall man with short, dark hair. I recognized him as one of Alexander Knight's assistants. He introduced himself, then said, "Mr. Knight would like to speak with you in his office." I stared at him, trying to steady my breathing. He smiled, "Yes, Miss Carter, please come with me." I followed him to the special elevator that only the top executives used. My heart pounded with every floor we passed. Alexander Knight's office was at the very top, complete with glass walls and a breathtaking view of the city. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped out onto plush carpet. Large paintings decorated the walls. A sleek desk with a nameplate reading Alexander Knight sat in front of huge windows. "Miss Carter, please wait here," the assistant said politely. "Mr. Knight will be with you in a moment." He left me standing there, taking in the massive space. I couldn't help but admire how organized everything looked, from the neat stack of papers to the color-coded files. I was too nervous to sit, so I stayed on my feet, clasping my hands together to stop from fidgeting. After a minute or two, a door on the other side of the office opened. Alexander Knight walked in. He had taken off his suit jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his shirt, revealing strong forearms. He seemed more relaxed, but his face was still serious. "Miss Carter," he said, walking toward me, "thank you for coming up." "Of course, sir," I replied, trying not to stammer. He gestured toward a set of comfortable chairs by the window. "Sit, please." I did as told, perched on the edge of the seat. He sat across from me, leaning back slightly. There was a small table between us, and he reached for a glass of water. For a second, I wondered if I should ask for some, but I didn't want to be rude or seem casual. I felt like my entire life was under a microscope. "About your presentation this morning," he began, "I was impressed by your analysis. I want to know more about the research you did." That was a relief. Maybe I was here because he wanted deeper information, not because I had made a fool of myself. I smiled a little. "I have all the data stored on my computer. I can send you the full report if you like." He nodded. "Do that, but also I have some questions right now." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Where did you learn to interpret demographics like that?" I started telling him about my background. I had studied marketing and statistics in college. Though I didn't finish my degree because of financial reasons, I needed to work to support my younger sister, who at the time was still in school. He listened, never interrupting me. I found myself relaxing as I spoke about something I loved: research and data. After we discussed the marketing plan for a while, he said, "I'd like you to be part of a focus group on a new campaign. Harriet can handle your current tasks, I assume." Yes," I said, "I think she could." "Good, I'll inform her," he said, standing up. "Send me those files by the end of the day, please." I took that as my cue to leave. I rose, still holding my notepad, and hesitated. I wasn't sure if I should thank him or if he expected me to just walk out. He had a commanding presence, even in casual conversation. Finally, I said, "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Knight." He nodded once more and said, "You're welcome, Miss Carter." That marked the beginning of more frequent interactions with him. I found myself in meetings with his team, going over data and campaign strategies. Sometimes he would single me out for an opinion. At first, I thought it was because he was testing me. But as the weeks passed, I sensed he actually valued what I had to say. That realization gave me confidence, and I started to speak up more. Then one night, we worked late on a pitch for a new partnership. It was near the holiday season, and most people had gone home. Mr. Knight and I were in the conference room, surrounded by empty coffee cups and printed spreadsheets. We were both tired, but we had a deadline to meet. "You can call me Alexander," he said at one point, looking up from a chart. My heart fluttered with nerves at the idea of calling my boss by his first name. But he insisted. The clock on the wall showed it was past 1,000. He noticed how exhausted I was and suggested we take a break. He disappeared into his office and returned with 2 bottles of water. "Let's step outside for a moment, get some fresh air," he said. We took the private elevator down to the lobby and walked out onto the sidewalk. The street lights were glowing, and the city's nightscape stretched all around us. We didn't talk for a while, just walked along the block. It felt surreal. My boss, Alexander Knight of all people, was right next to me, casually sipping water from a plastic bottle. He was not the cold figure people talked about. He was quiet, yes, but there was a warmth in his eyes that night. We ended up standing in front of a small park where the trees were decorated with festive lights. He leaned against a metal railing around a garden bed and looked at me. "You work hard," he said. I shrugged. "It's what the job requires, isn't it?" He smiled. It was the first real smile I had seen on him. "It's refreshing. Many people try to climb the ladder quickly. But you're different. You actually want to do the job well." I felt a rush of pride and embarrassment at the same time. I wasn't used to such direct praise. "Thank you," I said softly. He looked back at the park lights. "If we finish this campaign strong, it will be a huge win for the company. You'll get the credit you deserve." I parted my lips to respond, but stopped. There was a strange tension in the air. Maybe it was the quiet of the late hour or the glow of the holiday lights, but something was different. I felt drawn to him in a way I had never felt for a boss before. It was a flutter in my stomach, a pulse in my veins. Alexander inhaled deeply, then gestured back toward the tower. "We should wrap up soon. Tomorrow will be another busy day." We walked back, and I tried to push aside the strange feelings that were blossoming inside me. I kept telling myself it was silly to have a crush on him. He was a famous billionaire, and I was a junior admin. Basically, it didn't make sense, but hearts are not always sensible. As the weeks went by, I found we had more late nights together. We would work until the building was empty, or we would talk about ideas in his office while everyone else went home. One night, I noticed that he had ordered takeout for both of us without asking what I liked first. Still, it was thoughtful. He had got me a chicken salad and fries, explaining that he wasn't sure of my food preferences but hoped I liked chicken. I remember laughing at how normal the conversation felt. He looked at me from across the table in the conference room and said, "So, Sarah, what do you do outside of work?" I almost choked on a fry. He had never asked me about my personal life. "I don't have much free time," I admitted. "But I like reading, watching shows on my laptop, and sometimes going out with my sister, Lily." "Your sister," he repeated, "is she here in the city?" "Yes, she goes to college not too far from here," I said. "We're close." He nodded thoughtfully. "That's nice. Family is important." I wondered if he had siblings or anyone special in his life, but I was too shy to ask him directly, so I just focused on eating my salad. After a while, he spoke again. "People think I'm a workaholic," he said, looking at his laptop screen. I looked up at him. "Are you?" He chuckled lightly. "Probably. It's all I've ever known, really. I took over my family's company when I was quite young, and it expanded from there. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to just not do this anymore." "Would you be able to stop, just walk away?" I asked. He shook his head. "I don't think so. I feel responsible for everyone who works under me. I feel like if I'm not at the helm, something will go wrong." There was a vulnerable edge to his voice I'd never heard before. I suddenly felt a strange urge to comfort him, to say something that would ease his worries. But I only said, "I understand." We kept working side by side, and soon it was past 11 again. My eyes were drooping. When the final revision of the proposal was done, I yawned, leaning back in my chair. "I'll take the train home," I said. "Let me give you a ride," he offered. I blinked, my cheeks heating up. "Really? It's out of your way, I'm sure." He shrugged. "I have a driver, it's no trouble." I couldn't see a polite way to refuse, so I agreed. 10 minutes later, we were in the back seat of a sleek black car, the city lights rushing by. I gave the driver my address, and Alexander asked, "What area of town is that?" I told him, and he nodded. "I see. My driver can handle it." He stared out the window for a moment, then turned to me. "Sarah, thank you for all your help lately. I know it's not in your job description to work these late hours and handle so much stress." I smiled softly. "I don't mind. I'm learning a lot, and I appreciate the opportunity." We locked eyes, and it felt like we were the only two people in the world. He reached out, almost as if he wanted to hold my hand, but then he pulled back and cleared his throat. The car pulled up outside my building, and I said good night. Stepping out with my bag, my heart was pounding as the car drove away. Looking back, I guess that was the start of something deeper. We developed a rhythm of working late, talking about things beyond the scope of the job. Eventually, lines blurred. I realized we were building an unspoken connection, one that was both professional and strangely intimate. One Friday night, after we'd finished a major project, Alexander suggested we go to a nearby restaurant to celebrate. It was a small, upscale place he frequented. I was nervous about being seen in public with him because of the company gossip, but he assured me that no one would care. He was wrong, of course. People always gossip about him. But I wanted so badly to be near him that I agreed. Over dinner, we shared bits of our personal histories. He told me about how his parents had passed away when he was in his early 20s, leaving him to take over night enterprises. He never really got to have a normal youth. I told him about my dad leaving my family when I was a kid, and how my mom struggled to raise me and my sister on her own. We found strange comfort in each other's stories. After dinner, he insisted on paying. I expected him to have his driver take me home again. But instead he asked if I wanted to go back to his penthouse to keep talking. I knew it was a bad idea. I knew it crossed a line that employees and bosses shouldn't cross. But the way he looked at me like he was asking for something he didn't usually allow himself, I couldn't say no. So I went with him. His penthouse was as grand as I'd imagined, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a breathtaking view of the city lights. But it also felt lonely, with its vast open spaces and spotless furniture. He took off his suit jacket and offered me a seat on a plush leather couch. We talked more about life and work, about random things. Then at some point, we stopped talking. He leaned over, and our lips met. It was like a spark lit up inside me. I kissed him back, my heart beating so fast. All the tension and the late-night meetings and the lingering looks, it all poured out in that moment. We ended up in his bedroom, and I don't think I'd ever felt so wanted or so scared at the same time. It was a rush of passion that neither of us tried to stop. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was shining through the curtains. I turned over to see him lying there, watching me with a quiet expression. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," I whispered, feeling a wave of realization wash over me. I had just spent the night with my boss, my billionaire boss. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. I swallowed hard and nodded. "Yeah, I'm just thinking about how this might change things at work." He sighed. "I know, we'll be careful." I sat up, pulling the sheets around me. "We should keep it quiet, obviously." He sat up too, "If that's what you want." I looked at him, trying to read his eyes. "Is that what you want?" He paused and said, "I think it's best, at least for now." He offered to have his driver take me home again, but I insisted on catching a cab. I needed some distance to clear my head. As I rode away, I stared out the window, wondering if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life, or if it was the start of something magical. In the weeks that followed, we tried to act normal at work, but the tension was impossible to hide. Whenever he was in a meeting with me, my heart hammered in my chest. I would catch him looking at me, and my cheeks would burn once or twice. We stole moments together, kisses in a quiet corridor, a quick embrace behind a closed door. It was thrilling, dangerous, and emotionally overwhelming. But then, after about a month of these secret meetups, he suddenly pulled away. He became distant, cold. He stopped calling me up to his office so often. And when we did talk, he was curt. I felt confused and hurt. But I told myself that he had warned me how complicated his life was. Maybe he realized his affair was too risky. He was my boss, after all, and I was just an assistant in the marketing department. If word got out, it would be a scandal for the company and for him. I convinced myself to accept it. Maybe we had just had a brief romance that wasn't meant to last. I tried to bury my feelings and focus on my job. I even started thinking about finding another position elsewhere because seeing him every day was painful. Then one day, Harriet called me into her office. She said, "Sarah, you've been wonderful, but Mr. Knight has requested you be assigned to a different project. I don't have a lot of details, but you'll be working on a lower-tier campaign now. I'm sorry. I wish I could keep you on our team." That was like a slap in the face. I realized Alexander was pushing me away in more ways than one. He didn't even tell me to my face. I just got reassigned to a less important role in the company. It felt like punishment for letting my heart get carried away. Not long after that, I found out I was pregnant. I remember standing in my tiny bathroom, staring at the test stick in my hand. There were 2 bold lines. My entire body went numb. I took 3 more tests just to be sure, and every single one confirmed that I was pregnant. I panicked. I was certain the father was Alexander Knight. I had not been with anyone else in that time frame. We had been careful, or so I thought, but mistakes happened. And here I was looking at a positive test. I sat on my bathroom floor, tears streaming down my cheeks, wondering what to do. Part of me wanted to call him, to tell him right away, but how would he react? He had already pushed me away at work. Did he care about me at all, or was I just a fling? I couldn't find the courage to face him yet. I thought about telling Harriet or my sister Lily, But in the end, I told no one. For a week I showed up at work in a fog, my stomach turned with morning sickness and nerves. Finally, I decided I had to do something. I went to find Alexander in his office, determined to tell him the truth. But his assistant told me he was in a meeting. I waited. But the meeting dragged on, hours passed. And by the time I could see him, I had lost my nerve. I told myself I'd try again the next day. The next day came, and he was traveling another day, and he was busy with the board of directors. Days turned into weeks, and each time the words got stuck in my throat, I worried that telling him might cost me my job if he decided to lash out. Maybe he'd think I was trying to trap him. Maybe he'd say it wasn't his child. I was so terrified that I ended up not telling him at all. Finally, I quit. I knew I couldn't hide the pregnancy forever, especially once I started showing. I told Harriet I had family issues to deal with out of state. I didn't give anyone the real reason. Harriet seemed sad to see me go, but I knew in the pit of my stomach that this was the only way. I couldn't stay there, seeing him every day, carrying his child in secret. It was too much. I packed my things, said my goodbyes, and left Knight Enterprises behind. I retreated to my small apartment, letting my savings dwindle. I wrestled with the future, a single mother. Alone in the city, how would I manage? I tried to find a new job, but the morning sickness made it hard. Soon I was too pregnant to pass interviews without raising questions about maternity leave. Doors shut in my face. My sister helped when she could, giving me moral support, but she was just a student. She didn't have money to spare. I ended up taking small freelance gigs online just to keep the bills paid. Months passed, and I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy named Noah. He had the same dark hair and strong features that reminded me of Alexander. I cried when I held him for the first time, overwhelmed by love and fear. How was I going to explain to him one day who his father was? How would I provide for him? Despite the uncertainty, Noah gave me strength. I found an inner resilience I didn't know I had. I woke up every morning determined to be the best mother I could be. Sometimes when I rocked him to sleep, I imagined Alexander was there with us, smiling and whispering gentle words. Other times I was angry that he had left me alone to handle this. It wasn't fair to blame him completely since I had never told him the truth. But in my lonely nights, I couldn't help but resent the situation. It was almost a year later when everything changed. Noah was 10 months old, crawling and starting to babble. I had gotten part-time work as a marketing consultant for a small startup. The pay wasn't great, but it helped me cover rent, food, and daycare. I had managed to scrape by, but it was tough. I never expected to see Alexander again. I thought I had left that world behind, but one day, while I was out grocery shopping with Noah, I heard someone call my name. Sarah. I turned to see Harriet standing there, holding a shopping basket. She looked surprised and happy to see me. We exchanged pleasantries. She noticed Noah and gushed over how adorable he was. "You never told me you had a baby," she exclaimed. "How old is he?" I hesitated. Harriet had no idea who the father was, nor did I plan to tell her then and there in the middle of the grocery store. I just said, "He's about 10 months now." She raised an eyebrow. "So you must have been pregnant when you left the company. Why didn't you tell anyone?" I shrugged, feeling my cheeks burn. It was complicated. I needed a fresh start. She nodded sympathetically. "I understand. Hey, are you back in town for good? Do you have time for coffee?" We ended up getting coffee at a nearby cafe, and I tried to keep the conversation light. I talked about my freelance work, and Harriet talked about the new marketing campaign she was handling. Then she paused, looking at me with a curious expression. "There's an event Knight Enterprises is hosting next weekend," she said. "It's a charity fundraiser. I'll be there, and so will everyone else in the company. You should come. It might be a good chance to network. Who knows, you might meet someone looking for a marketing consultant." Alarm bells went off in my head. Alexander Knight would definitely be at that event. The idea of seeing him after all this time made my stomach twist into knots. But Harriet's suggestion was tempting from a professional standpoint. I needed more clients, more connections. This could be a big break for me. "I'm not sure," I said hesitantly. "Think about it," she said, handing me a small invitation card. "I can get you on the guest list. You're talented. Sarah, you shouldn't hide away." I smiled weakly, looking down at Noah. He was busy gnawing on a teething ring, drooling all over. "Thanks, Harriet. I'll think about it." All week I debated with myself. Should I go to this fundraiser and risk running into Alexander? Should I try to stay invisible? But then the practical side of me whispered that I needed better paying gigs. Noah's expenses would only grow as he got older. The least I could do was attend the event, mingle, and hand out my business card. Maybe I could slip out before running into Alexander. That Saturday night, I hired a babysitter for Noah and dressed in the one formal gown I owned. It was a simple black floor-length dress with short sleeves. I wore minimal jewelry, just small earrings and a watch. As I rode the bus to the event venue, I fought waves of anxiety. Memories flooded me the first time he and I had worked late together. The walk around the block, the takeout dinners, the night I spent at his penthouse. I arrived at the Grand Hotel where the fundraiser was taking place. Glazed marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a soft hum of chatter greeted me. I checked in with the event staff. Harriet had indeed put me on the list. I managed a polite smile as they welcomed me. I took a glass of sparkling water from a passing server and moved into the ballroom, scanning the crowd. It was packed. People in elegant gowns and tuxedos stood in groups, chatting and laughing. Large banners displayed the name of the charitable cause Knight Enterprises was supporting. Waiters carried trays of hors d'oeuvres and champagne. I recognized a few faces from the office, but many were strangers. Harriet found me within minutes, smiling brightly and giving me a hug. She introduced me to some co-workers, and I handed out a few business cards describing my consulting services. It felt strange to be back in the environment of corporate talk and polite small talk. After a while, Harriet excused herself to speak with an executive, leaving me alone near the edge of the room. I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. As if someone was watching me, I turned, and there he was. Alexander Knight stood by the stage, dressed in a black tuxedo. He was talking to a group of people. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I saw that his gaze was locked on me. My heart pounded like crazy. He looked exactly as I remembered: tall, handsome, intense. I tried to hide my panic by turning away, but it was too late. He had seen me. I forced myself to look calm, sipping my water. My hands were shaking. Suddenly, the background chatter seemed to fade as he walked toward me, leaving his group behind. "Sarah," he said quietly when he reached me. "Hello, Mr. Knight," I said, trying to steady my voice. His eyebrows furrowed. "You came?" "Yes, Harriet suggested it might be a good chance to meet potential clients," I explained, struggling to keep my composure. He looked me over from my hair to my dress, and I wondered what he was thinking. Did I look different now that I was a mother? Did he sense something had changed? "I haven't seen you in so long," he said. How have you been?" I swallowed, wishing I could melt into the floor. "I've been fine, busy with personal things." He searched my eyes as though he suspected something deeper. "You left so suddenly," he said. "No one knew why." I forced a smile. "I had family stuff. It was the right time to move on from the company." He nodded slowly. The tension was thick between us. His gaze slid to my left hand. As if checking for a ring, there was none, of course. I shifted awkwardly. Part of me wanted to run, another part wanted to tell the truth right then and there, but not in the middle of this crowd, not when my emotions were so raw. Just then, Harriet appeared and pulled me into a conversation with another executive who wanted to meet me. I gave Alexander a quick nod and stepped away. Throughout the rest of the evening, I felt his eyes on me every now and then, but he kept his distance. My mind whirled. Thinking he knows I'm here now, what does he think? Does he suspect anything? I managed to give out several business cards, meeting potential clients. I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe this night would help my career. Still, the constant ache in my chest reminded me of the secret I carried: the child who was at home with a babysitter. The child whose father was just a few yards away, oblivious. When the time came to wrap up, I said my goodbyes to Harriet. She mentioned that there would be a final announcement from Alexander Knight. I could stay if I wanted, but I decided I'd had enough stress for one night. My plan was to slip out while everyone was gathered near the stage. I walked toward the exit, relieved to escape any further confrontation. But as I reached the foyer, a hand lightly touched my arm. I turned to see Alexander behind me, breathing a bit fast as if he had hurried to catch me. "You're leaving?" he asked, glancing around to make sure no one was in earshot. "Yes," I said, clearing my throat. "I've done what I came to do." He looked at me as if searching for words. Finally, he said, "Can we talk somewhere private? Maybe after this event. It won't take long." I hesitated, torn between wanting to get away and knowing I should face this eventually. "Okay," I said quietly, my heart pounding. He nodded. "Wait for me in the hotel lounge down that hallway. I'll wrap things up here." 15 minutes later, I was sitting in a quiet corner of the hotel lounge, clutching my purse in my lap. The lounge was mostly empty, with low lighting and soft music playing. My thoughts spun in circles. What would I tell him? If he asked about my life, would I finally confess about Noah? Alexander showed up, still in his tuxedo, looking tired. He took a seat across from me and rested his hands on the table for a moment. We just stared at each other. "Thank you for waiting," he said. I nodded, my mouth dry. He leaned forward. "Sarah, I need to know why you left. Was it something I did?" I swallowed hard. It was complicated. I stopped, unsure how to continue. He waited, his eyes intense. Finally, I found the courage to speak. "Alexander, last year you pulled away from me. You pushed me off the project we worked on. I didn't understand why. But I realized maybe you regretted what happened between us." He looked pained. "I never regretted what happened," he said, voice soft. "Sarah, I got scared. I've never allowed myself to get involved with anyone at work. It crossed too many lines. I didn't want to risk your reputation or mine. I thought distancing myself was the best way to protect us both." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "Well, it hurt," I said simply. "And then I found out I was pregnant." The words hung in the air like a bomb. His face went white. He parted his lips, but no sound came out. "You were pregnant?" he echoed finally, his voice almost a whisper. I nodded. "I have a son. He's 10 months old. His name is Noah, and he's yours, Alexander." He leaned back, covering his mouth with his hand. Shock, confusion, and a million other emotions battled on his face. Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice trembling. I blinked back tears. "I tried. I was going to, but you were so busy. And then you had me signed away from your projects. I was scared you would see me as a problem or, worse, deny it. I didn't have the confidence to face you, and I was afraid you'd, I don't know, force me out or threaten me. And pardon me, I was just plain terrified of your reaction." He exhaled shakily, dropping his hand to the table. "Oh my God, Sarah, you have no idea. I would never have forced you out. I would never have denied responsibility. I didn't know." I nodded, tears now rolling down my cheeks. "I know you didn't know. That's why I'm here telling you now, because I realized I can't keep this from you forever." He let out a long breath and closed his eyes for a moment. 10 months. He murmured, "All that time you were alone with our child." I sniffled, reaching for a napkin to dab at my eyes. It was hard. "But Noah is healthy and happy. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me." He opened his eyes, and I saw tears glistening in them. I had never seen Alexander Knight cry, not even close, but this was breaking him. "Sarah, I want to see him. I need to see my son." A pang of relief mingled with fear in my chest. "Of course, I wouldn't keep him from you. That's not why I waited so long. I was just afraid." He reached across the table and gently took my hand in his. "I understand this is a shock, but please, I want to be involved in his life. Let me meet him." I nodded, tears still streaming. He squeezed my hand, his face torn between guilt, sadness, and a kind of trembling excitement. We talked a little more, but it was hard to concentrate. I could tell he was in a whirlwind of emotion. He wanted to come by my apartment the next day to meet Noah. I agreed, though it felt surreal. I left the hotel in a daze, not entirely sure if I had done the right thing, but at least the secret was out. He knew now. The next day, I waited nervously at my apartment, holding Noah in my arms. I had tidied up the small living room as best I could, though there wasn't much to make perfect. My heart raced at every sound from the hallway. Finally, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Alexander standing there, holding a stuffed toy giraffe. He looked uncertain, nothing like the cool, confident man I had known at the office. I smiled shakily and let him in. "This is Noah," I said, my voice trembling as I showed him our baby boy. Noah looked at Alexander with wide eyes, then reached out a tiny hand to grab the giraffe. Alexander swallowed hard. "Hello, Noah," he said, his voice soft and filled with awe. I set Noah on the floor with his favorite blanket. He was crawling around now, babbling happily. Alexander knelt down hesitantly. Holding out the giraffe, Noah crawled closer, grabbing it with a gurgle of delight. Alexander looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes again. "He's beautiful," he whispered. I nodded, feeling emotional. "Thank you." He glanced around my small apartment, clearly noticing how modest it was. His expression tightened with guilt. "How have you been managing all this time?" he asked quietly. I shrugged. "Freelance work, some help from my sister. I manage." He took a deep breath. then turned his attention back to Noah. Slowly, carefully, he picked Noah up. Noah giggled and reached for Alexander's face, tugging at his collar. Alexander laughed softly, pressing his lips together as if he wanted to keep from bursting into tears. I stood there watching father and son meet for the first time, my heart twisted with emotions I couldn't even name. Over the next few weeks, Alexander began to visit regularly. He brought toys, diapers, clothes, anything he thought Noah might need. He even helped me find a better pediatrician. At first, it all felt overwhelming. I worried he was trying to buy his way into Noah's life. But then I saw how he would sit on the floor playing with Noah, letting him crawl all over him, or how he would talk softly to him, telling him stories about the city lights at night. One evening, I noticed Alexander had tears in his eyes again while holding Noah. When I asked him what was wrong, he said, "I can't believe I missed almost an entire year of his life. All his firsts, his first smile, his first steps." I sat beside him on the couch, gently putting a hand on his shoulder. "It's not your fault, Alexander. We both made choices. What matters is that you're here now." He looked at me. "I want to be in his life every day, Sarah, not just as some visitor." I understood what he meant. "That's good. I want that for Noah too." He looked away for a second, as though gathering his courage. "Would you let me help you financially? I can give you a better place to live, cover expenses." I held up a hand. "I appreciate the offer, but I can't just pack up and move. I have some independence, and I don't want to lose that. Noah and we've been on our own for a while now." He frowned. "I understand, but please let me at least help with daycare costs or any immediate needs." I sighed, knowing I couldn't provide everything Noah deserved on my own. "All right, we can talk about it, but I don't want to feel like a charity case." He touched my cheek gently. "You're not. You're the mother of my child." I nodded, feeling the old, familiar warmth of his presence. It was so strange to be close again. But this time an even deeper bond tied us. Yet I didn't want to jump into anything romantic. We had to focus on Noah first. As the months rolled on, Alexander proved to be a dedicated father. He started scheduling his work around times he could see Noah. He brought me leads on freelance gigs. It wasn't immediate or magical, but slowly we formed a new sort of routine. Sometimes he'd join me and Noah at the park. Sometimes he'd take Noah for half the day so I could catch up on my projects. The more I saw him with Noah, the more my heart softened toward him. One morning, I woke up to find a text from him asking if we could have lunch, just the two of us. He said there were some things he wanted to discuss. I got my sister Lily to babysit Noah for a couple of hours and met Alexander at a quiet Italian restaurant downtown. He was already seated in the corner booth when I arrived, dressed in a crisp suit and looking a bit nervous. "Hi," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. He smiled, but it was a small, tense smile. "Thank you for coming." We ordered, and for a few minutes we just made small talk about Noah and my latest project. Then he cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Sarah, I've been thinking about the future," he said. "I know we haven't really talked about our relationship, but I'm going to be honest. I still care about you deeply. I want us to be a family, and I mean a real family under one roof." My heart fluttered. I looked down at the table, feeling both excited and scared. "Alexander, we've barely had time to talk about us." He nodded. "I know, but you and Noah have become the most important part of my life. I don't want to be a weekend dad. I want to be there to wake up to him in the morning, to help out when he cries at night. And I want to be with you." I took a shaky breath. "What exactly are you saying?" He reached across the table and took my hand. "Move in with me, be with me. Let's try to make this work as partners and parents, not as strangers meeting up for custody." I felt tears brim in my eyes. I had dreamed of something like this. But I was also terrified of history repeating itself, of him pushing me away again if things got complicated. "I'm scared," I admitted. He squeezed my hand. "I understand. I messed up before. I won't do that again. If you give me a chance, I'll prove it. We can take it slow, whatever you need." For a long moment, I looked into his eyes. I saw sincerity. I also remembered the coldness he once showed. But maybe he really was different now. The love he had for Noah was obvious. I knew that. For our child, I wanted to try. "All right," I said softly. "I'm willing to see if we can make this work, but I need some time to transition. I can't just leave my apartment without figuring out the details." He exhaled with relief, a hint of a smile on his face. "Of course, anything you need." A few weeks later, I stood in Alexander's penthouse, holding Noah on my hip. I watched as movers brought in my boxes. It felt surreal, like stepping into a life I never thought possible. The vast windows overlooked the city, the furniture was elegant, and everything gleamed with expensive taste. Yet strangely, it didn't feel cold anymore. Alexander was there, guiding the movers, making sure everything went smoothly. He came over to me and Noah, smiling warmly, "Welcome home," he said, kissing my cheek. I smiled back, "Thank you for letting me bring some of my old things. I need my own little touches." He chuckled, "Of course, this is your space now too." We had agreed to take things slow romantically, but living together made it tricky. Some nights I slept in the guest room, wanting to maintain a bit of independence. Other nights, especially when Noah was fussy and needed comforting, we found ourselves side by side, rocking him to sleep together. Slowly, we fell back into the closeness we once shared, but this time it was even stronger, bonded by our love for Noah. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen warming a bottle for Noah when Alexander approached me. He looked serious but also excited about something. "What is it?" I asked, noticing the document in his hand. He took a breath. "This is an investment agreement for your freelance marketing business. I want to help you turn it into a proper agency if that's what you want. You'll have an office, staff, whatever you need. You're too talented to just do small gigs." I stared at him, stunned. "You want to invest in me?" He nodded. "I believe in you. I know it might be a big step, but I want to help you build something real, something that will give you security and growth, and I don't want you to feel dependent on me." Tears pricked my eyes. It was such a generous offer, but part of me felt guilty. "Alexander, I appreciate this, but I don't want you to think that I'm using you for your money." He shook his head, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Sarah, I'm doing this because I believe in you, and I love you. This is our family, and I want us to build a future together." My heart thundered in my chest at his words. He had never directly said he loved me since we reconnected. Slowly, I set the bottle down and looked at him, tears gathering in my eyes. You love me?" He nodded, a slight tremble in his lips. "Yes, I know I messed up before, but seeing you with Noah, being together like this, I love you, Sarah. I want us to have a life together, not just for Noah's sake, but because you make me whole." My breath caught. I realized I loved him too, despite the pain and the time apart. He had shown me how willing he was to change and grow. I saw the father he had become and the partner he was trying to be. "I love you too," I whispered. He moved closer, pulling me into his arms. We stood there, Noah fussing in the background because he was hungry, but for a moment, I felt my entire world align. It was the happiness I never thought I'd have. Months went by, and life settled into a beautiful routine. Alexander and I took turns taking Noah to his baby classes. He hired a wonderful nanny to help on days when both of us had major work commitments. My marketing consulting turned into a budding agency thanks to his investment. I had a small staff now, and Harriet had even joined me as a project manager after deciding she wanted a change from night enterprises. One evening when Noah was down for the night, Alexander and I were relaxing on the couch, watching a movie. He had his arm around me, and I leaned against him, feeling content. The city lights glittered outside, but I barely noticed. I was too wrapped up in how peaceful I felt. He paused the movie and turned to face me. "I've been thinking," he said. "I want us to get married. I want to stand before the world and say that you and Noah are my family." My heart soared. I had secretly hoped for this, but I didn't expect it so soon. Tears brimmed in my eyes as I smiled at him. "Alexander, yes, yes, I want that." He grinned, pulling a ring box from his pocket. My breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. He took my hand, slid the ring onto my finger, and kissed me softly at first, then with deeper passion. I threw my arms around him, tears of joy slipping down my cheeks. A few weeks later, we had a small ceremony. We chose a beautiful garden on the outskirts of the city. It was a quiet, intimate wedding with only close family and a few friends. Harriet was there. My sister Lily was my maid of honor, and Alexander's closest advisors came to witness the union. We wanted to keep it personal, not some huge event splashed across tabloids. I wore a simple white dress, and Alexander looked handsome in a tailored suit. Noah, at 14 months old, by then wore a tiny tuxedo and toddled around, grinning at everyone. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Alexander leaned in and kissed me with such love that my heart nearly burst. The guests clapped, and little Noah laughed, clapping his tiny hands. It was a day I never thought I'd have, considering how far we'd come from a lonely assistant in his vast company to a single mother struggling to provide for her baby, and finally to a family bound by love. As the sun set that evening, we stood by a small pond in the garden, watching the orange and pink reflections on the water. Noah was in Alexander's arms, cooing softly. I slipped my hand into Alexander's free hand, looking up at him with gratitude. "Thank you," I said softly, tears of happiness in my eyes. He kissed my forehead. "For what?" "For loving me," I said, "and for loving our son." He smiled, his eyes full of warmth. "Thank you for giving me a chance to make it right." Noah babbled, reaching his arms out to me. I scooped him up and kissed his little forehead. Then Alexander wrapped his arms around both of us, holding us close. The three of us stood there, bathed in the glow of the setting sun, a family at last. 2 years later, if you saw us walking down the street, you'd never guess the turbulent journey that led us here. Noah is now a lively toddler, running around with endless energy. Alexander still works long hours sometimes, but he's learned to balance his schedule, and he never misses important moments: Noah's first day at preschool, his first time riding a tricycle, or any family birthday celebration. I've grown my marketing agency into a respected firm with a small but dedicated team. Harriet is my right hand, and we've landed a few big clients partly thanks to Alexander's connections, but mostly due to our hard work. Every night we sit down to a family dinner. We share laughter, stories, and plans for the future. Alexander makes sure to read Noah a bedtime story, even if it's just a short one when he's had a tough day at the office. Then he and I sit together, sometimes talking about our day, sometimes just enjoying the quiet. There are still moments when the memory of the past returns the fear I felt when I thought I had to raise Noah alone, the guilt Alexander carries from missing the first year of Noah's life. But we've learned to forgive ourselves and each other. We've learned that real love is about facing fears, taking chances, and working through mistakes. On weekends, we often visit that small park near Night Tower, the same park where we once stood under the glow of holiday lights. Sometimes we watch Noah chase pigeons around the grass. Other times, Alexander and I sit on a bench, reminiscing about the nights we worked late in the office, never imagining we'd share a son and a home one day. And every so often, I watch my husband and my son together, and I feel a rush of gratitude so strong it brings tears to my eyes. We had traveled a rocky road of secrets, misunderstandings, and regrets, but we came out stronger. Now we are a family bound by love and trust. Yes, I slept with my millionaire boss, and for a time our child was a secret, but in the end, he became more than a boss. He became my partner, my husband, and the father of my child in every sense of the word. Our story might have started in shadows, but it ended in a warm, steady light. And that is all I could ever ask for.